So Adam, on my very first day working for a house builder, the chairman sat me down, who you know well, and he said to me, Simon, a house builder is a very simple organisation. It's a sales-oriented company that happens to be in the business of building houses. Mm-hmm. How true have you found that statement on your journey, and how has your opinion of sales and marketing changed day one in founding Metis through to now as an established and highly respected house builder?
Good question. I think my approach to house building, as you know, is about getting things done as quickly as reasonably possible. I think that's just good practice across the board. And equally, marketing should be geared towards getting houses sold as quickly as possible. As we grow, that positive cash flow becomes even more important because you have many more costs, obviously, because you're building more. And therefore, finance cost becomes more of a factor. And I think today that's even more important because costs are just so much greater across the board. Money costs a lot more money at the moment, given interest rates, marketing retainers, not cheap.
But cost effective.
Of course, value for money. But we've also got the problem at the moment where I think ever since COVID, for some inexplicable, infuriating reason, everything takes so much longer as well. So you've got a bit of a double whammy situation where every pound costs more money and every pound is out for much longer. All of which means that if you're not selling houses quickly enough, then finance costs can quite easily and quickly erode hard-earned profit. So I would agree with the statement that it's really sales and marketing based because you don't get any income unless you're selling your houses. And if you think about house building, it's very cash intensive. It's very front loaded. You're spending more often than not millions of pounds on land, many millions more on construction, and you don't get anything back until you're selling. So having marketing strategically being on point is so important, particularly as you grow, I think. Because just to get it wrong is just too costly. Should that mindset be different if you're a smaller developer? Probably not. I think it's good business practice to reduce holding cost wherever you can, whether you're small or large.
And have you found that your appreciation of marketing has changed as you've grown? Because I suppose when you first start out, you're land led. You've got to find the land to be able to do this, to do the sales.
Yeah.
And I suppose, has your opinion of marketing as you've been on that journey, or your appreciation and your need for it, changed and evolved?
It has, yeah. I think when we first started out in 2008, so just before the credit crunch happened, we were focusing on building show homes, launching from a show home, try and maximize value that way, which worked okay because at that time money was quite cheap. And everything cost a lot less, relatively speaking. I mean, 15 years ago, you could build a housing development for £100 a square foot, whereas now you're looking at £200 to £250 as an SME, depending on what abnormals there are. So I think the severity of holding stock in terms of the impact of that finance cost was less. But as we've grown, it's become clear that the more units we build, the more important off-plan selling is. Because with off-plan selling, as a proactive thing, it's a different skill set, as you know. I mean, you're armed with a scale rule and a construction drawing. But if you get that right proactively, then first of all, it increases your sales period, which is obviously a good thing, logically. But also, when you come to launch from a show home, that momentum is there, and you can create a real sense of urgency among buyers who may not have bought otherwise. So my appreciation for off-plan selling has become far greater. And I think you'll tell me that the marketing approach for that needs to be slightly different as well, because it's different selling a concept from selling a shiny new show home.
And I think, the art of off-plan selling is strong brand. And I know we went on that journey 18 months ago, and creating exclusivity, that's how you generate off-plan sales, create a feeling of, I can't miss out. And I suppose, so for you as a business, what's the impact of carrying stock plots?
Oh, it's not where you want to be. It's prohibitive, really. I think if you look at the financial implications of it, particularly today where they're on steroids, the holding cost of not having that money in your bank account, the interest on that. You've got utility bills you've got to deal with, and they're not cheap. Council tax, the cost of keeping the properties new, because don't forget they are brand new and you're selling them as brand new, so you've got to keep them that way. There's a diversion of management time to keep them that way, but also it stalls the sales process because it's hard to create urgency with buyers if you have lots of empty houses. So yeah, not where you want to be. I think it's inevitable in a tougher market that you're going to carry some stock, but it's important to minimize it.
And are you very reliant now? Is your business plan geared around off-plan to enable future land acquisition, etc.?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, as you know, we invested in a very good off-plan salesperson who does that and has always done that, which, as we've said, is a slightly different skill set from selling from a show home. And it's just essential for the reasons I've said, really. It's all about getting positive cash flow into the business. And I've certainly learned that the marketing strategies for every development need to be bespoke to that development. You have to make sure that you've done your research properly, that you're targeting the right audience through the right mediums, that you're launching the product off plan at the right time, not too early. And you guys have helped us with that. You've nurtured that knowledge that everything needs to be bespoke.
And how do you feel? So before we were working with you, you were using kind of agencies ad hoc for kind of creative work. How have you found like a partnership with the marketing agencies supported you as a business?
It's, as I've said, really, it's about understanding the business's needs, and you've done that with us. You've helped us create our brand, or helped us develop our brand, which, as you say, is essential when you're selling off plan. And I think as you grow, it's an opportunity that you shouldn't miss, because if you're building your business properly and you're creating a decent track record where you can demonstrably show people that you deal with people properly, that you're creating a very nice product, it is stupid not to shout about that. It's a missed opportunity not to shout about that, because that more intangible marketing breeds confidence in buyers.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, from our point of view, the sort of retained relationship that we have with you, it's the most beneficial relationship for a client, because you have our consistent attention. With project-based work, it's very much, the client tells us to jump and we jump, and we'll present ideas, but we have a consistent dialogue with you. We understand your kind of business goals and frustrations, and what your motivations are, and we can support you with that. And I think from a retained point of view, it's the best kind of relationship for us. And I guess really as a business that's supported you, on your journey the last few years, would you say?
Yeah, certainly. It's about getting to know personalities and working off each other and bouncing off each other, because there's so many different facets to it that you have to embrace everyone's skill set, and you can only do that if you really know each other, I think.
Yeah, cool. And so as an SME house builder, what do you feel the future for selling houses is as an MD?
It's hard to know what's coming, but the first thing to do is not become complacent, stay sharp, because it's certainly the case that what you're building today, just because that's working, won't necessarily be working tomorrow. So your specification needs to constantly change with the way the world changes. So, 10 years ago, it became about broadband speed, and now that's just a given. Then during COVID, it became more about space, and now study, and all of those things are now requirements. So it's important to try to stay sharp so you can stay ahead of the curve and try and think what's next, which is difficult. So it's about not getting complacent. But I think the key thing that we can improve as an industry, certainly in the SME world, is more interaction between house builders. Because there are so many creative minds and talented people that the industry attracts. I mean, there's so many different skill sets, as I've said. And I think as house builders, you'll know we're generally quite wary of each other. We don't want to give away our commercial secrets and give our competitor the upper hand. But the reality is that there just aren't enough houses being built. So there's plenty of space for us all. So I truly believe that harnessing that together and feeding off each other a bit more will help us to flourish. For Metis, I think the important thing for us to do next is work on a USP. So what truly defines us as separate from other developers. I think we've done quite well to build a reputation where we treat people properly and that we build nice homes. But I don't think that's enough going forward. We need to really find out what makes us unique, or work on something that makes us more.
And you thinking sort of unique
identifiable.
in terms of like product and spec, or like where's your head at in that?
I think so, yeah. That's probably it. I mean, you're going to need to help me out with that, I think. But I think there needs to be something that makes us special.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I suppose it's great that you've come to that point as a house builder, because I suppose you've proven yourself, you're established, you've got a very respected brand. And I guess it's great to be in that position now where it's like, right, well, now how do we be truly different? Because you have got competition, and
Indeed.
yes, there's enough space in the market for competition, but it's so important, isn't it, that customers know when I buy from Metis, this is what makes them different.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So we've talked about sales, but as a house builder, obviously land feeds the machine. How do you feel marketing could better support you on the sort of land side?
I think marketing can help land in much the same way as it helps sales. So the important thing is to get the feelers out, get our ability to do good land deals and extract the value for landowners more widely spread so that we can get to those landowners. But to be honest, once the land buyer is in contact with the landowner, it's all about the land buyer. Successful land acquisition will always be about that human interaction between the land buyer and the trust he or she can build up with the landowner. It's all about the rapport and what would differentiate the land person from the competitor across the road. So it's all about that human interaction, because people buy from people, whether it's land or houses.
And do you feel, so I mean, we as an agency don't get overly involved in the land kind of side of things at the moment, but how do you feel, are there opportunities for marketing to kind of penetrate, to enable you to find more land or promote you more on the land side? Because I know that from my experience, agencies are very much more focused on the sales side and building brand at sales, as opposed to looking at building brand at land. Do you feel there's opportunity there? Yeah,
very much so, because it's a similar process, isn't it? It's just in reverse. When we're selling, marketing's key to get us to our buyers. So it should also be key when we're trying to buy, we find the people who are trying to sell. So there must be some synergy there, and there's something that can be worked on there for opportunity.
And what about planning stage? So understandably, you don't want to market too heavily at that point, but do you feel that there is greater opportunity for brand at planning that will support and ease the planning process, perhaps?
I think it's a good question. I think certainly there's a space for marketing in the consultation phase of planning, so that there's clear communication between developer and local community, key local stakeholders, etc. But that's about clear communication. It's about making them understand who you are and what you're all about, and again, creating confidence. So yes, there's space for that. I think, though, that your vision, which we talked about recently, which is commendable, and that's about waking the silent majority to try to combat NIMBYism, I think that's a difficult nut to crack. And that's because the silent majority aren't supportive, they're just not fussed, in my view. And the reason for that is planning permissions aren't really sexy. There's nothing really desirable for the person who's not really bothered. I mean, if you think about it, a planning permission generally is a representation of construction inconvenience for the next couple of years. So I think that's a difficult one. You need to try to make planning permissions sexy for the average person to make them want to get out of bed and come and support you properly.
But do you feel, so with that silent majority, if you give them something beyond those homes to support the planning application through, so you're giving something tangible to the community, you're listening and engaging to understand, proper public consultation, what is it that the community needs, and subject to the land being of value to enable it, giving something to the community, not bribery, but as in, if we don't build here, you won't get this, then that gives them a reason to support, which otherwise, that those that either aren't fussed or don't understand the process wouldn't bother, to give them something to actually support through.
Well, yes, I mean, but you're talking about the people who are coming to the public exhibition. and the people who are
Getting more people,
actively engaging.
Yeah, or trying to activate the people that maybe aren't coming to the exhibitions to communicate, to say, this is the process, educating on the process.
Yeah. Well, I would say we do that already. I mean, as a business, consultation is absolutely key in planning. We can talk about that more in a bit. But yes, you're right. You need to be able to offer the community what it wants. So you need to understand what it wants first, and that's why consultation is so important. But I'm interested to know what you have in mind, because we've been trying that for many, many years. And for that reason, we are quite good at getting planning, because we do understand the local community's requirements. But you can only do that to an extent. I mean, you can offer to build what the local community needs, like whether they need a new scout hut or whatever it might be. But beyond that, trying to really galvanize the masses, if you like, I think that's a more difficult one, because I'm not really sure what you can offer, because you're already offering a lot as a house builder.
Yeah, I suppose it's the Section 106 contributions or SIL put money into the public purse, but I don't think because of it's not obvious where that money actually goes.
No, it's not. And
the tangible, being able to offer something tangible to a community to say, if we build this, we also do this, which is what the community needs.
Like what?
Well,
what do you have in mind?
Me.
Yeah. Well, but we do that.
We
do that.
Yeah.
We absolutely do that. I mean, you won't find a house builder who would have a problem with the principle of saying, if we give you this, then it's going to make our life much easier and get us a planning permission. I mean, that's a well-trodden path. The problem is finding enough people to want to support you. Because as I say, a planning permission at the end of the day is just construction inconvenience for a couple of years. There is nothing immediate with a planning permission, and we live in an instant world now where everyone wants everything straight away. And it's not like when you get a planning permission, it's what's an example? Say you buy a Ferrari, not that I have, but if you buy a Ferrari, you're buying it because you want the thrill of the speed. You can just get in it, drive down the motorway, get that thrill straight away. You don't really get that with a planning permission. So the important thing, I think, to crack that nut is for you to try and find out what that USP is.
And do you feel, because I suppose from my naive point of view in planning, that I suppose I have a very idealistic view, which is that if we can present a house builder and a brand to the community and explain why you should want Metis to build there as opposed to someone else, which then emphasises marketing. And I know that the desire really with planning is to try and not necessarily stay under the radar, but not excite too much to the local community.
No, it's not. No, it's the opposite. Reasons. It's the opposite.
Okay, so how do you feel then do you feel there's opportunity through marketing, and it absolutely public consultation, but to brand build, to raise awareness of why you would want, kind of earlier, maybe even before planning, to raise awareness of the brand, to gather that support?
You mean in an area where you're thinking of lodging a planning application soon? I think you would need to present a good case for why that's going to be effective, because I'm not sure it would be. Because I think naturally house building is seen as a bit of an irritation locally, which is why there is the NIMBYism. And as I've said, that's because there's nothing really in it for people generally when there's a planning permission in place. And that's what it is, isn't it? What is in it for me to want to come and actively support you here? That's the challenge. And that's why I think it's a difficult nut to crack.
Yeah, interesting. And how do you think the marketing process could best support you in the troubles of the planning process at the moment?
I think, as we've said, it's if anything, it's about clearer communication at consultation stage. But aside from that, I mean, the planning process to be successful is all about a lot of consultation. There are no shortcuts in planning. You've got to meet the community. You've got to meet the stakeholders. You've got to communicate clearly. You've got to understand what the problems are. You've got to debate things robustly. There are no hiding places. It's all about human interaction. So if there's a place for marketing to help that, absolutely. But it's generally about that human interaction.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. AI, everyone's discussing it at the moment. How do you feel that AI may change house building or the process?
As you know, I'm not very technical as a person, so I'm just about. So I'm venturing into an area beyond my expertise here. But I would say computers, robots, they are logical things, they're binary things, they're emotionless. For me, house building is all about making judgment calls in massive grey areas all of the time. So I think there's an obvious tension there to start with. I would have thought that AI can certainly create efficiencies. I can see that. And where there's a mathematical problem and it's a yes or a no, I'm sure that can help in that respect. But if you break the house building process down, you have land. Is AI going to revolutionize land buying? Probably not. I think, as I've said, land buying is all about human interaction and getting the landowner to trust you. I'm not sure an emotionless robot's going to be able to do that better than a human if the human's good.
What about in the land finding process?
Possibly, possibly. Yeah, I think if you can focus it there, it would probably have more effect. But I suppose my starting point is that a good human should always be better than a good robot when it comes to the actual interaction with the person. Planning is the next part of the house building process.
Can we replace the planning committee with robots?
Well, I could talk all day about the issues of the planning process. I'm under strict instructions from you not to do that today, so I won't. But what I will say is the problems with the planning system really boil down to two things, and those are human things. So the first thing is a lack of human resource or enough human resource in local authorities, because we work with very good officers and they don't have the tools or the resource around them to do the job as efficiently as they would like to. So there needs to be more human resource to balance up against the house builders on the other side of the fence. So that's the first point. I think the second point is there is no commerciality in the political world of planning. And that means that there's a complete lack of understanding of how house building works in central government. So give us some commercially minded politicians in central government, then we're onto something. But until you fix those problems, which are both people problems, then AI is not going to make a difference. I can see AI becoming effective at creating more efficiencies in the admin process and all that kind of thing, but not otherwise. You've got to fix those two fundamental points first.
So you can't see us being in a world where a planning committee doesn't exist and planning permissions could be authorised or approved based on logic?
I would love that. But that's not the reality. You are never going to get to that position because there will always be negotiation and there will always be people in charge. So yes, that would be fantastic if you just tick all the boxes and you get a planning permission, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
As I say, I think if the people are good and there's enough resource, then you should get to the result you need. And that's where we need to focus. But AI is going to help with efficiencies, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think it's a great observation because I think there's a lot of concern, understandably, as to what does AI mean for me, for my job. Will I be made redundant in 5 years because there's a computer that will take over? But where planning, house building, it's all an emotional
it is.
decision and purchase, isn't it?
Indeed.
You can't have that emotional interaction with a computer.
No, indeed. And I think, but taking it further through the house building process, construction, there might be more room for it there, where there's more mathematical problems to solve, and it's it's an engineering calculation or something like that. But then again, value engineering a set of construction drawings is a very human experience quality, which I'm not sure you could replicate. Marketing, I can see it there. I mean, if you can create an experience via virtual reality or whatever you call it. Is that the right?
That's the one.
That's the right expression. That replicates properly a show home experience. So you can walk in, you can see it, you can feel it, you can smell the bread baking in the oven. You have that spatial awareness. If you can replicate that via VR, AI, whatever we're talking about, then yes, I can see that working. I mean, because that accelerates the sales process, which, as I've said earlier, is what it's all about. It's positive cash flow. So you'll please MDs up and down the land if you can do that, and then you've not got to invest in and build a show home. So
absolutely. So VR is without doubt the future of the property search experience. So I'll be very, very interested to get your take. So as an MD, the challenge with a lot of the tech is it is there, but the appetite to explore it, because of the cost of it at the moment, like any emerging tech, it's more expensive at the start, isn't there, which is ultimately causing that the tech isn't evolving as quickly as it should in our sector. Do you, as an MD, is it something that you're keen to speculate in to push the industry forwards?
Yep.
Because we tend to see in our sector a real resistance to evolution in tech.
Yep.
Do you find that?
Yes, and I'm probably guilty of that myself. I'm a dinosaur. I'm very old school. But I think if you can show that there is a very realistic possibility of what I've just said, so you can create a show home experience immediately, that's as good as having a show home, then you're not going to get, you'll get lots of support behind that. I would certainly invest in that. But the trick is for you to actually convince people, MDs, boards, that it's actually going to happen. So if you're saying that technology is there and that can happen, in your view.
Well, it is and it can, but commercially at the moment, it doesn't stack up to model every house type.
No.
You could certainly, the show home, virtual reality, you can get it very, very close. Not the smells just yet. We'll get there.
Yeah, right.
But
you think you will?
100%.
Yeah, okay.
I think the scary part is we're not that far off.
Right, okay.
Won't be long till we're all plugged into computers.
Fine.
Sitting in cupboards, living in this virtual world. Won't be long. You watch. But I think the interesting, so I heard a stat that last year Metis headset outsold Xbox. So it shows...
Metis headset?
Not Metis, maybe.
Right. Oh, yeah, they copied us, Meta, didn't they?
Yeah. Meta's headset, virtual reality headset, outsold Xbox. So it shows the way that we're going. We'll soon, I think, in a couple of years, every house will have one. And the challenge to us as marketers is to be ahead of the curve, so that when every household has got one, that you guys are there and ready.
Yeah.
And I think that is my concern at the moment, is the sector isn't evolving and pushing ready for it, which does require speculative investment and spend to to do the market research to make sure we're ready.
Yeah.
But I think there's the way that marketing budgets are set, siloed for developments, and understandably, it has to stack up with a business plan. And there never really seems to be this this magic pot of money for kind of research and development. And is that something that you think should be there for house builders?
Yes, it should. But if you can help us sell our houses more quickly, there'll be more of a pot. So yeah. Which is what you do,
Fair
obviously.
point.
But yes, there must be constant research and development opportunity. And I think you're right. I mean, the house building industry has always found it difficult to evolve. And it requires trailblazing. But you wouldn't have a problem from Metis with investing in that kind of technology if you can convince us that it's actually going to do the job that we want it to do ultimately.
Yeah. Very good. Adam, thank you very much for your time. It's been really interesting to get your take on these subjects.
Pleasure.
And thank you for your continued support.
No problem. Thank you for yours.